at us tonight. So Matt's going to be talking about tracking Australian Painted Snipe. So I'm just going to read a little blurb about Matt before I get started. I'm going to tell you all about himself anyway. So, Painted Snipe or Australian Painted Snipe are Australia's rarest breeding water bird. They're listed nationally but also globally as endangered. They skulk in shallow wetlands among water plants and mud, but sadly, this strikingly beautiful this bird is actually continually regarded or relegated to the too hard basket for in-depth research. But luckily, Matt has come along. So Matt has been hypnotised by cryptic and threatened water birds for over 20 years. His recent work on the endangered Australian bittern developed incentives for bittern-friendly rice farming and included a successful crowdfunding satellite tracking project. So more recently, he's actually caught the painted snipe bug. So back in 2000, actually. It's pretty recent now. While he was actually studying grolgers, and despite many hours of trudging through wetlands, he has since found them at only about 15 sites. Is that correct? Yep. And he now wants technology to do all the hard work for him in terms of finding new sites, and he does that through actually tracking the birds instead. So Matt and the rest of the Australian Painted Snipe tracking team have been uncovering some of the movements of this species, and Matt will share some of the team's findings with us tonight. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be in the Hunter. Before I get any further, can I congratulate you all on 50 years? It's an amazing achievement. You obviously have a very strong club, and I want to thank you especially because the work that you're about to see, the Hunter Bird Observers Club was a key donor. And so before I get into it, thank you to all of you, all the members, and I know there are other individual people that contributed to this crowdfunded project, and on behalf of the whole team, thank you very much. I'd really like to highlight Mick Roderick as well in helping make it all happen, not just through the initial crowdfunding, but also through the BigNet and the Twitchathon funds a couple of years ago. So a big thank you to Mick. Little do you all know, but behind the scenes, Mick was constantly in touch with me, trying to work out the perfect time to give this presentation, because there's such hard birds to find, let alone catch and then track. We didn't want to go too early, and then you guys wouldn't get the full story. But we are still trying to catch more, as you'll see, but I think we've got a very good idea of what happens with this strange bird. But before we get into our species, I just wanted to introduce this bizarre family, Rostratulidae. There's only 3 species. We've got our one, which is endemic to Australia, found nowhere else. We used to think it was just a subspecies of the greater painted snipe of Asia and Africa, but we've done the DNA and we know they're separate. And then of course there's this strange one here from South America. They look like a sandpiper or even a plover, but they're not really related at all. Their closest relatives are jacanas, seed snipe in South America, and even the plains wanderer. As we heard in the introduction, they're endangered both in Australia and globally. The most recent total population estimate from 3 or 4 years ago came at the end of a drought and was only 340. Obviously it has very low reliability, but you can see the sort of near mythical species that we're dealing with. And I just thought I'd get you all excited. This is from only 12 months or so ago in North Queensland, near Dad with 3 little babies. As you'll see in a second, it is officially the 6th most elusive bird in Australia. And when you combine its conservation status, like how endangered it is, with how unique it is, being in a family with only 3 species, it ends up the 44th global priority. Here it is, number 6. These people from University of Queensland did a study using all eBird data, and it's the 6th most elusive bird species. Please note that a couple of these are almost certainly extinct, like Coxon's fig parrot and bluff-breasted buttonfly. And this is the edge species concept that I was talking about. Australia has 8 in the top 100. Plains Wanderer is number 1 on Earth. It is a monotypic family, the only species in an entire family, and it's critically endangered. Just a little bit more of an introduction. This is from the Australian government about 10 years ago. It's about the best map that you'll find up until our recent work. Danny Rogers, a good friend of mine, did a study 20 years ago and showed that the Australian painted snipe had declined by around 90% since the 70s, more than any other Australian water bird. It depends on wetlands that have cover. So it will come out into these open areas to feed, but it needs the combination with the little rushes and sedges and so on. Needless to say, they're cryptic. We even now have the calls for night parrot. We still have no call for this bird. There's no advertisement call. If you find it on an old cassette or CD and it says Australian Painted Snipe, it's actually the greater painted snipe, and it was put on there at a time when it was we thought it was just a subspecies. So there's no confirmed advertisement call. We don't know how they find each other. Notoriously difficult to detect. Essentially, there's no reliable annual sites anywhere. So these people that spend, $200,000 or $300,000 or more trying to see as many birds as they can in a year, sometimes they can't get one because there's just no site. BirdLife Australia started a painted snipe project about 25 years ago in 2001 and did quite a lot of work encouraging people to report sightings. But when the millennium drought broke around 2011, 2012, there was a surge of sightings. There were 400 birds found over a couple of years. We had 87 in the Rice, for example, in the Riverina. And since then, so that's now about 13 years ago, the sort of effort to uncover the species' secrets sort of waned. And even though they're an endangered species with so few birds, there's almost no targeted conservation. These are the images out of Hanzab that we got permission to use on our website. You can see, unlike so many other birds, it's the female that is bolder and some would say more beautiful, but I think, as you've seen from some of the photos, the male is also incredible. They're like gold sequins. And the youngsters are very hard to pick from the males. Now, before we did any tracking, you could see, I apologise to people up the back, but these months here, these columns are winter. So they basically vanish in the southern half of the continent. So of course we hypothesised that they were a north-south migrant because in the north there was no clear pattern, but down south you can see they peak. This is when people find them, including here in the Hunter. September, October, November, December, January, and then they start levelling off. So just over 3 years ago, thanks to organisations like the Hunter and people like Mick, we managed to raise $124,000. So we could buy the expensive transmitters and run a whole project to uncover these secrets. And we got wonderful support in the media, like from the Guardian's cartoonists, first time on the moon. And we put the species back in the spotlight. Look at these wonderful organisations. lots of bird clubs, environmental consultancies. You can see BirdLife up the top there, and some individuals, farming groups, and so on. Without them, it's impossible. These solar 2-gram US manufactured transmitters are worth $7,000 each. And so we're very careful when we put on this special bit of jewellery. And then of course it costs about $100 a month to download the data from the French satellites. But we didn't have enough money to get all of those. We can get that data wherever the bird goes, but it's not super accurate like a GPS. These other tags use the mobile phone network, and then their GPS accuracy. Like if there was a bird in this room, the fix we would get would be somewhere from that, would be very close. Whereas with these ones, sometimes they're out hundreds of metres, and so we have to filter the data. So 2 different types. Here's our wonderful team. Some of these people you all know: Inka, Danny, Stephen, Chris, Laurie, Geet, James, Heather, Andrew. They all have various skills related to threatened species or shorebirds, waterbird tracking, and so on. And I'm delighted to tell you that as of November last year, we've managed to catch 9 with the help of wonderful landholders and people finding birds. The first site, you wouldn't believe it, this is down near Balranald in southwestern New South Wales, about an hour or so west of Hay in the New South Wales Riverina. It's flooded wheat stubble. I would never have thought to look here for painted snipe. There were 25 there. And that site has proven really good. We ended up getting 2 there, as you'll see in a minute, and 7 in the Macquarie marshes, where there was 12 birds at one point. So we've basically gone to 2 of the 3 best sites in the whole country in terms of abundance and caught them. And these are just some of our highlights. These wonderful landholders helping us in the Macquarie marshes with their horses. They're able to find them very well on horseback. You'll hear about Peter Morton down in the Low Didgie a bit later. Just fantastic. A real privilege to see these birds. Of course, this here is a Latham snipe. We do get a little bit of a bycatch, so to speak. But back to the beginning. This is on the wheat stubble. We hadn't caught one yet. It's drying out very fast. We slept by this swamp for a night or 2, doing 2-hour shifts, checking the nets in the mud. And so the most sleep you'd get was just a couple of hours. Turns out we were wasting our time completely, and that you could just catch them around dawn or dusk. But it's an emotional roller coaster. This was a good omen. The Latham snipe, unrelated but shares the name. And then Laurie got a car bombed in this irrigation channel next to the wheat stubble, and we were having a coffee, and I think it was about 7:30 in the morning, and we basically decided to pull the pin. Something had happened, the birds had moved, or our method wasn't right. We were going to have to look at net guns or something else instead of the mist nets. And then she came. We checked the nets, and there she was. The very first Australian painted snipe to be caught and tracked. And this is Gloria, with her very fancy transmitter. And I'm sure you can appreciate our joy. Very happy. Now, all these birds have stories, and they're connected with people. These are the sassers, and Linda named this bird after her mother that had passed away from breast cancer, and it was a tribute to her. And they got to come out to the site and see where Gloria had been. It was very emotional for them and very meaningful. And then came Marcelina. Now, Gloria led us to Marcelina. The landholder had these sensor cameras up. Again, this is not a spot where I would personally go looking for painted snipe. You can see our mist net there. And it was based on the tracking data from Gloria and these sensor camera images from the landholder, and boom, we get our second bird about 2 or 3 months later. Now we could only speculate where they would go, like looking at that data. We got great local data. Like I said, Gloria led us to Marcelina, but she also showed us that the birds will roost half a K from the water's edge, which to me is completely unexpected. I have found them maybe 50 metres or so from the edge, but not half a K. Would you go looking for a painted snipe? That's where these birds were roosting. And here's some of the other habitats that we're using. This is Elaeocharis, rushes with mud flats. Beautiful habitat, all on private land. We thought we lost contact with Gloria. I even told Steve and Linda, I'm sorry, the transmitter has failed. And I wrote a tribute on the website, said goodbye Gloria. And then she appeared in Birdsville. The transmitter came back online. Look where Marcelina went. 2,200 kilometres near the Daily Waters pump, for those that know the top end. And so it just took us on a tour of some brilliant wetlands, most of which we never knew painted snipe occurred there. Now the following year, Macquarie Marshes. This is a natural wetland, but it's actively grazed. This is farmland and recently burnt, which is interesting. So the structure is very low and open for them to feed in, with cover adjacent to it. You can see this stuff in the background. Combined where they can roost, yeah. We've got 5 birds, jackpot, over about 4 days. One of them took us to North Queensland. This is the bird carrying high accuracy GPS transmitter. We didn't get this data until 6 months later, when he flew through 5G coverage. We've since changed all those GSM tags to 4G. That was a little hiccup between China and us. The data is incredible. These are the movements between roosts and feeding areas. Just for scale, this is a storage dam in the Macquarie Marshes, and it's 360 metres in diameter. So it's little wonder that, someone sees painted snipe here, and bird watchers come and look, and I think it's gone, and it's just changed its roost, and it's now 1.5 k's away, but still in the region. These are some of the movements that we've got from those birds from the Macquarie Marshes. Quite complex, using a large number of wetlands. This is Gary and Leanne from the Macquarie Marshes, just wonderful people to work with, showing how you can combine threatened species conservation and productive, profitable farming. These are the tracks of 5 of the birds, from the Low Bidgie and from the Macquarie Marshes. 2 other birds either had mortality or the transmitter malfunctioned, but these 5, you can see they show this northwest pattern of movement. They leave the Murray-Darling in summer. It's like they don't like the frost. You know, grey nomads. They go up north for the winter. Here's some of these beautiful wetlands, these dune swale systems that they use along the way. The Lake Eyre Basin, all 5 of those big movers went through there. It seems to be very important, and it's an area that so few bird watchers ever go to. But of course the beauty of tracking is it's not biased to where a bird watcher can go. It's independent of that. There's some more of those wonderful. This is the Channel Country. You know, it's all flooded at the moment. I've got so many slides, I'm going to go quite fast, but you can just see this is not like a godwit or something leaving and flying thousands of kilometres without stopping. These are incremental journeys. They add up to a lot, but the wetland networks along the way are critical. Now this is a little sneak peek of some recent work that I've been doing with the Arthur Rylah Institute and all these wonderful people that work down in Melbourne. There's the Arthur Rylah Institute, you can see. We've combined the tracking data with all observations of painted snipe over the last 29 years, and we've vetted them because a lot of records end up, the coordinates are not very accurate and they end up in a town, you know, and painted snipe's gone to the hairdresser or something like that, and so we vet the records. But this is a species distribution model. So based on all those records and all these predicting variables like rainfall and flooding regimes, that we can model where the species is. And so this is the best insight we've ever had to where this mysterious bird occurs in Australia. You can see the Riverina is strong. The Macquarie Marshes up here, the Gwydir, Culgoa, those systems very strong. Lake Eyre Basin, really important. And look at this, the Barclay table. We've got to go there, Mick, as soon as possible. As soon as possible. And you can see other key spots as well in the Kimberley. There's quite a bit on the Queensland coast, but overall this is a bird of inland eastern Australia. And we can use these movements to sort of suggest where the key flight paths might be, based on our tracking data and this modelling of where painted snipe habitat is. And you can see the red lines here represent what is likely to be the most important movement patterns. Now with Arthur Rylah Institute, I've been able to look at their home ranges using all those fixes that we get. And without going into too much detail, like this is one of the birds in the Low Bidgie, and this is one of the birds in the Macquarie Marshes. Some of their monthly home ranges were up to 441 hectares, but the average was 165. That's just for 1 month. And that is when they're most resident and least mobile. This doesn't include exploratory trips, little opportunistic trips. If you look really carefully, you'll see some of the fixes are left out. We get rid of the outliers and we make this polygon only include 95% of the fixes. So we don't get an inflated home range of how much area these birds require. Now I just want to draw your attention back to 90. This is week 1. Week 2 is quite similar. Keeping in mind the diameter of this storage dam is 360 metres. Then it gets really tight. If I'd had the chance, I would have thought, wow, maybe he's sitting on eggs.
And then look what happens over the next few weeks. And then it goes out to over 1.5 k's. So incredibly dynamic, just over those 9 weeks. These are the home ranges of all 5 birds while they were at the Macquarie Marshes near that storage dam. So we're getting all this other information. It's not just finding out that they are a north-south migrant. We're getting all this other data on their home range size and their flight heights and speed, which is really important in this era of wind turbines rolling out across the country. And so without going into too much detail here, they fly at they call it the rotor swept area a lot. So renewable energy is great and all, but we do not want these things next to wetlands where painted snipe are. It looks like they're high risk, and that's why the federal government has funded this work with the Arthur Rylah Institute and I. They're certainly nocturnal. 24 fixes that we got from 90, where he was clearly in flight, and we got the speed and all that. They came around sunset, and they came around 2 a.m, which makes it even worse. The bird, it's even more vulnerable to be flying at night. Another thing that we did with that work, drawing on this tracking data, is we've come up with a habitat framework so that people can actually assess the value of a painted snipe site without painted snipe being there. So we've gone through all the literature of all the things that are important to painted snipe. For example, they love the complexity of shorelines, and so you can score the site. This here is magnificent. This gets the full 4 points for that particular element. This one gets 3, 2, 1, and if you can just imagine like a swimming pool edge, that gets 0. So consultants that go out and work for proponents can estimate the value of an area for painted snipe without the birds being there. Here's an example over in Perth, famous Herdsman Lake. It gets really good scores for the emergent vegetation and the water regime, but it scores terribly for human disturbance. There's lots of dogs and runners and kayakers, and so it only gets 41 overall. Farm Dam, also quite low, whereas this is the site that you've been looking at those beautiful chicks from. It's massive, and so it does really well with all these variables, and it gets a really good score for connectivity and disturbance. Now this is the work that I mentioned, thanks to Mick and BigNet and all the people that contribute to Twitchathon. We're using the tracking data to write up conservation plans for the very best of sites. And we've so far got 2 of them that I've been talking about all night. One in the Macquarie Marshes and one in the Low Bidgie. And so this is a great opportunity for us to capitalise on the data and build relationships with the landholders and get some targeted conservation going for these birds. And I'm really pleased to let you all know that this now is a 10-kilometre feral animal proof fence. We're not sure if foxes and cats have population level impacts on painted snipe or not. We're not sure. There's a fair chance, but we do know that goats and pigs and so on damage habitat. And so this wonderful Morton family have started doing this. I think they've got about 5 k's done so far. All those beautiful wetlands that you saw pictures of, there's now a huge fence around them, stopping feral animals, not just predators, but the herbivores as well. We've got the New South Wales environmental water managers from the department targeting the way environmental water is delivered for painted snipe, which is brilliant. And we're looking to do burning trials in the Macquarie marshes. I just want to, before I finish up, leave you with this inspiring video from the low Vigi. This is Peter realising that the birds seem to like these little channels from the tracking data, and him going, I think I should get more water in there and dig a little bit out. He's got the pump going. That's you see there's an off-band rail there. Most of them are painted snipe. How good is that?
So he just increased the water.
Well, we're learning together about what they need. Thanks again to all these wonderful organisations. And I would have liked to just end on a really positive note like that, but I have to bring it back to reality. This is the trend for Australian Painted Snipe. I just have to keep it real. It's devastating decline. So anything we can do like that with Peter is good.